1 second. All right, we're here. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Salt Lake Takes. We're back here with our third episode after about a week-long hiatus. Had to happen. We're going to Seattle. We were up there for a week, so figured it was not really time for a podcast while I was up there. It was, just doing vacation stuff. So we're back here, though. We're back every single Thursday, every week until the NBA season starts. We're here, ready to go. We're sifting through a bunch of Jazz stuff. But as far as, things are sitting right now, there's not much to add on the Jazz front. There hasn't really been much of a... I don't even need that. I got a mic right in front of me. There hasn't been much of change as far as, Jazz news or, how the roster is shaking out right now. Because, it is, August. The roster is fully complete. So I don't really see much changing as far as the roster goes unless there's something drastic happens. A Dame trade still hasn't happened. James Harden trade still hasn't happened. As far as we're concerned, those are still in motion, but haven't really had much forward progress on that. So that, of course, could change how the Jazz, look at things moving forward. But, within the past 2 or so weeks, we've only had about a little bit of FIBA play. We've seen, Walker Kessler get about 4 minutes in his first exhibition game, and then Markkanen, dominated with 29 points or something like that. Playing Estonia, but those are only the exhibition games. Don't put too much, stock into those. I mean, USA is going to stay the main favorite there, but there's always usually a team or two that kind of sticks out as a shock. But that is still in the early stages right now. We don't have much to talk about there because we've only got a handful of games to go off of. What we are going to focus on today, though, is the Jazz point guard position, as it has been a constant talking point within the Jazz community. Whoever's going to start, we don't really have a full idea right now of who that's going to be, but we do have about 5 or so options that the Jazz do have on hand right now. And there's not really, I would say, a bad option to go towards because you have a few ways of be flexible. You could go younger and start Keyonte George. You can go off of last season's peak production, almost maybe in Chris Dunn, and you got Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton and Talen Horton-Tucker, which all three guys have shown great flashes. Clarkson was averaging 20 points per game last year. So you have a lot of options and not much, to really go wrong with. But I was sitting here today and I was like, let's go through and rank the options 1 to 5. Essentially how I would sift through it on a depth chart. Even without any major ton of additions to the squad, there is a lot of depth and almost a logjam at the position. There's about... with 5 options to go towards that all could get, routine minutes, that's a lot of quantity at the position to go for. And, you can't really expect all of these guys to come in and, average 25, 30 minutes a game. So some guys can get cut short, which is why I feel we can start off here with number 5, which I would put on my list. Let me pull up that little graphic here. Boom. Here we go. Number 5, I would put Chris Dunn here. As much as I like Chris Dunn as a player and what he can provide for the Jazz, I think that he is probably at the short end of the stick. I was writing about today about how I think Chris Dunn, as good as a player as he could be, I probably would slot him in at number 5 as far as pecking order on the Jazz depth chart. So when you're looking at it, he did have a great end to the 2023 season, picked up late by the Jazz. Averaged 13 points per game, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, and had some really good efficiency along with it. But I just don't know if that's enough to really merit a starting spot. I mean, he has great perimeter defense. Great perimeter defense and an efficient playmaker and shooter, as he's shown last season. But we have to keep in mind that this was at the very end of last season when the Jazz were trying to do essentially all they could to lose every game they can. They were putting Kristen out there to start in only 3 games. Talen Horton-Tucker was the one starting over him in every single one of the games that he played. And the games that Chris Dunn all played in, there was 4 games combined where either Sexton or Clarkson ended up playing. So going into next season, you're going to have all 3 of these guys healthy along with Keyonte George. And that's 4 guys you can project essentially going to be better than Chris Dunn. As much as I like Chris Dunn as a player and that this isn't anti-Chris Dunn, anything like that. I think it can be a 15-minute per game type of guy, can provide some good efficiency and some good defense like he always has throughout his career. Despite him not being, the standard of the top 5 pick he was once projected in, he's shown he's at least an NBA quality player as far as last season goes. But I think to pin him in as a starter, like I've seen some people saying, that's a little bit premature. That I would say. I think the sample size we're dealing with is a bit inflated. I mean, let's here. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna look up Basketball Reference real quick. Let's look at the talent. I'm taking a second here. Basketball Reference. Let's look at the talent that Chris Dunn was going up against as far as team quality goes when ending his last season. Sorry, it's taking a second for me to look this up. Game log 2023. Okay, we are here. Let's see if I can share this. 1 second here. Don't show the Here we go. Let's see. I'm still a little shaky with this, but we're gonna make it work here. Going for a detour. Maybe this is working. Okay. We might have the detour from this. The screen share. Oh, wait. It's doing something. Okay. You know what? I'm just gonna go off and name the depth chart. We're not gonna look. Okay, we got it. Okay. Here is Chris Dunn's game chart from last year. This is taking forever. I'm not doing this for every single player. But let's just take a quick look. He was playing OKC, San Antonio, OKC, Dallas didn't make the playoffs, Orlando, Charlotte. You got a few nice games, Miami, Boston, Sacramento. And that's two solid wins in a 20-game stretch. Portland lost against Milwaukee, Sacramento. I mean, it's clear the Jazz were not being competitive in these games, and they weren't playing top-tier talent. I mean, half these teams didn't even make the play. Over probably half these teams make the playoffs. I'm not going to go over here and count it real quick for you. But, I mean, that just goes to show there wasn't a lot of top-tier talent and a lot of, premier games like Chris Dunn was playing for him to really merit a starting spot. I'm sorry. I think he can be, a good rotational player and end up being, maybe like a 10-point per game score if we're really seeing that peak production. But even still, that is a lot to ask from a guy that's coming in on a non-guaranteed contract with a lot of just talent in front of him. I don't really see much opportunity here for Chris Dunn. Got some praise here from Planeta. You want to real quick? What's up, Planeta? We got some constant support here. See you in the streams often. Appreciate the love. But yeah, I would say that's about the main gist on Chris Dunn. I think he can be a good rotational player for the Jazz, but as far as a starter for the team, I would put him in at number 5 as far as the depth chart goes. We can move on though. It's about 5 minutes on Chris Dunn. That's about enough as I think we need. Number 4 though on the list that I would put in terms of depth chart as far as for the opening season. This is strictly for opening season. I would throw Keyonte George at number 4. I love this. This is nothing to take back from what he did in summer league. But we are now removed, about a month, a little bit less than a month from those. Maybe it has been a month at this point. About a month from summer league. So we have the hype has died down around Keyonte George, but now we're able to take a step back and realize we might need to slow down a bit because I mean, unless you are a top 3 to 5 pick in the draft, it's kind of hard to come and expect an instant starting spot from someone like Keyonte, even with the type of summer league that he had. I don't really think that he's going to come in and be this instant star that he was in summer league. Zach thinks Keyonte can play point guard. I agree. I think he can play point guard, and this is nothing to take away from what he can do for the Jazz in the future. Because if all things go well, even at the trade deadline, I could see Keyonte being the full-time starter, but for starting off opening day, we're looking at it from what the Jazz will start off with next season. I think Keyonte is best served off the bench, taking it slowly. I was looking at today. It's not. I mean, you could really interchange number 3 and 4 on this list as far as I'm concerned. I mean, even when you're looking at how Dunn played in his first season with the Jazz, he started the first game he was with the team, and then he started 71 of his 79 games. So the Jazz aren't afraid to play their rookie guards to start off, as it's shown in years past, but it is a new coaching scheme, new team, and a lot more competition than Donovan Mitchell had to deal with as opposed to Keyonte George. I mean, the team had Rubio, Dante Exum, Rodney Hood, and Alec Burks competing with starting minutes. That's a lot easier time to deal with for Donovan Mitchell. So I would say that's a bit of a different scenario to compare him with. But Keyonte can come in, and I could see him, having some efficiency struggles to start off with. He wasn't really the most efficient at Baylor. I think he was shooting the graphic just showed it, but I think it was 37%. from the field in his in his freshman season, and I don't really expect those to really get solved by the snap of a finger, especially at an NBA level. So I think that is of worry for Keyonte, which is why I would be hesitant for him to, come in and be the day one starter, because he will have some struggles like any rookie does. He will come in and not really, he won't shoot 20 points per game like he did in summer league. He had 3 games to show that, and he played really well in those 3 games, not taking anything away from him. But I think we need to pump the brakes, and instead of calling it like a Donovan Mitchell, he was a 16th overall pick for a reason. He wasn't coming in as like a lottery pick like Donovan Mitchell was. There are some clear flaws. There are some clear flaws with Keyonte. I mean, clearly there's some defensive woes you have to figure out. Even him as a point guard is a little bit shaky at this point. I know that the front office drafted him to be the point guard of the future, but there is some things to work out in that department. That's why I would probably wait at least maybe 2 months in the process to wait and see for him to actually get that starting nod. Until then, I think he's probably better served in that reserved role, trying to brought up slowly, because we see a lot of guys come in and that are like struggling with efficiency. Like Jalen Green is one of those guys that looks really well as a scorer, but they come in and they get way too much opportunity to start off with, bite way more they can chew off, and then it ends up turning out roughly for them. Because I mean, Jalen Green does not have the same type of, doesn't have the, trying to look for the word I'm thinking of, doesn't have the type of aura you would expect a second overall pick to come into his second or third season with. I forget, 2021, I think he came in with. So yeah, I think taking it slowly is going to be the wise choice for the Jazz, especially considering the type of players they have around them. I think that would be a smart move. By All-Star break, I think by all means, if he's showing out to show that he will be the future starting five, he will be the starting point guard or shooting guard of this team, whichever one that may be. I think he will merit a starting spot by that point. But I think as far as like day one, that's a bit of a stretch. So happy with Keyonte. He was pick 16 like John. Maybe we were talking so high. Yeah, no, I think he played really well in summer league. I don't want to take anything away from him, but again, we have a top 10 pick that was drafted 7 picks above him, and he may not even be. I mean, he's still got John Collins and Kelly Olynyk to work around in minutes in terms of Taylor Hendricks. So if we're keeping that type of energy with Taylor just because he didn't play in summer league, I don't see why it wouldn't be the same with Keyonte. I think they're going to be patient with their rookies. There's no rush here in this rebuild. They're going to try and be competitive or out the rip. So that's why I would put him in at number 4. Nothing says that he can't come in and be the starter too. I would actually kind of accept that, because that kind of shows the Jazz are leading into the youth movement like they're supposed to. But I don't know if the Jazz are going to quite go that direction. That brings us to number 3 on this list, which I think can be interchangeable with Keyonte. I would put Talen Horton-Tucker. So he ended in the same fashion as Chris Dunn. Talen Horton-Tucker ended last season really strong. I think he was like 17 points per, let's say. Yeah, I have it right here. And in the last 24 games, Talen Horton-Tucker averaged 17 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, had a really, really like solid output there. He showed what fans have been wanting to see from Keyonte or from Talen Horton-Tucker for a long time. I got some clarification. John Stockton pick 16. That's true. That's true. Yeah, I got you now. Okay. But back to Talen Horton-Tucker. I think that if all things go well, he could have the highest draft pick, or not draft pick. He could have the highest ceiling of any one of these 5 in the group, because he does have that 7'1" wingspan, does have that NBA pro frame that you love to see out of any player. But I mean, again, he has all the potential, but just like a lot of players do, have all the potential and doesn't really show it like they should. I mean, he was dealing with turnover problems even when he did have that type of opportunity. When he was in the last 24 games, he averaged 3.3 turnovers a game. I think for people to expect him to come in and be this number 1 option, to be the starting point guard and develop into this like really long, lengthy defensive two-way point guard that can start 82 games. I think that's a bit overachieving for Talen Horton-Tucker at this point in his career. He has played about 3-4 seasons in the league. He will be in a contract year. So if there was any time for him to make that major jump, it would be this year. But there is a lot of opportunity in front of him on the roster. So I don't know how much he'll be able to showcase what he did at the end of last year. Because, of course, he did have some flashes. But that was, again, without Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson and Keyonte George. So he will have a lot of competition, especially also with Chris Dunn going to be competing just like he did. There's going to be a lot of demand for that ball in the backcourt. So I wouldn't expect Talen Horton-Tucker to come in and be the shining superstar that every Jazz fan wants him to be. I would really, really like to see if, like, in a perfect world, yes, Talen Horton-Tucker to come in, be this, like a 7'1" wingspan, like 6'4", 6'5" at the point guard. That's really valuable to have, and I think like at his peak, that's going to be really dangerous to stop with the length and versatility this Jazz team has in general. But he hasn't shown that with the Lakers or with the Jazz, and unless it's in garbage time games or minutes, there hasn't been much to love out of Taylor and Tucker. But the physicals are always going to be there to be this like tantalizing figure within like within his player profile. But if there was any season for him to put it together, it would be this one because it's his player option year. He has 1 year to do it before he gets another chance at a big contract. And if he doesn't really show out this year, I don't really know how much he's going to get paid on the open market. The Jazz probably won't give him again $11 million like they are this season, around that type of figure. I just don't think he's going to get the type of opportunity you like to see. He got 28 minutes a game in the second half of the season. You're not going to get that type of production starting off next year when you have 5 guys at the same position competing for minutes. It doesn't even account for Bryce Sensabaugh or Ochai Agbaji, guys that can play the 2 guard. These are all guys you can end up playing at the 1 or 2 combo guards. It doesn't really matter if they're the point guard or not. But this is minutes that will inevitably be swallowed up. So I think, well, yes, the potential you like to see it with Talen is nice, but I don't really see a realistic scenario for him to come up and blossom into this like 20-point per game all-star scorer next year. Like I could probably see more upside in Keyonte George, or more realistic upside. But Taylor Tucker does have that appeal to him because he's always had that, unique build to make him stand out. I just don't know about it. Jazz says it could be a little bit crazy games this season. THC, George, Sexton, or Dunn are not pure point guard like CP3, Stockton, etc. And yeah, so it won't. You're not going to come and expect to see like this true passing point guard that's going to average over like 8 assists per game. And to be honest, the Jazz don't really need that because I mean, with a guy like CP3, I mean, like he does lack size and defensive ability, which is something that the modern NBA is not kind to teams that do not have that type of size and switchability and versatility to put on the defensive end. So I think the Jazz going out and prioritizing that and putting a focus on that is very important, and it's a very good strategy to build your team around, which is why I think you don't really need that playmaker if you have a lot of versatile guys around you to move the ball around. Like Talen Tucker has shown that he can at least pass the ball and distribute. But Keyonte, again, he'll have to work. These are a lot of guys that have the potential to be an okay playmaker, not like a great like point guard, like you'd like to see the Jazz. Like that's of course fun to watch. But the Jazz don't really need that at this point. And if they do end up needing it, it'll be shown this year because they won't be a successful team without one. Or they will not be a successful team without. Yes, yeah, that's correct. But as to wrap up Talen Horton-Tucker, injuries will probably give him a bigger role. Like let's say Jordan Clarkson or Colin Sexton end up going down like they did last year. I wouldn't be shocked if you see Talen Horton-Tucker start to blossom more. I think coming into next season, though, there will be a lot of emphasis to get Clarkson the ball, get Sexton the ball, and Keyonte George the ball, where I don't think you're going to see Talen Horton-Tucker come in and be like this on-ball creator every possession. I think, like I've detailed in the past, I think Talen Horton-Tucker's upside as a 3-and-D type of player is a lot better than it might be as like a primary playmaker with the ball in his hands because he's not really efficient with the ball. But I mean, he does have all the upside on the defensive end to be a force. So that's what makes me think of him. If he was transitioning into that role, I would have a lot more confidence if he was going to stick on this roster long term. But if he shows out next season, shows what he has the past 2 seasons, the Jazz are going to be cutting ties, which makes me think they're not going to put a lot of emphasis in starting him and giving him a ton of minutes like some other guys on the roster. But going into the top 2, though, I think you can honestly make a good case for either one of these guys. But at the end, though, I will put Colin Sexton at number 2, being the second best option for the Jazz to start, and probably the best option for a 6-man role. At least to start off on this, I think Colin Sexton and actually John Collins will end up being, or should end up being, the 2 primary bench creators of this team. And that's why I put Colin Sexton at number 2 on this list rather than 1. I think there is a very common situation we have between Colin Sexton and John Collins. I can say it for both type of players, where the potential of them being like this all-star borderline player, like 20 points per game. We saw Colin Sexton average 25 points per game on a bad Cleveland team earlier on in his career with some decent efficiency. And then John Collins is the same type of deal where he was averaging 20 and 10 on a Hawks team. You know, I think it was like 3-4 years back, and fans would love to see both of those players get back to those type of those levels. And while that would be great, I think putting them in a lineup full of players that need the opportunity in the ball of his hands, like Markkanen, like Kessler, is going to be improving offensively, and Jordan Clarkson will commanding a lot of shots. I think trying to get them back on that track with a lot of opportunity and shots being taken from those three guys, you put them on the second unit, and you have a lot more opportunity for him to work with and opportunity to shine. Because just like let's look at John Collins, for example. It's going to get him off track from the point guard discussion. But John Collins is going to come in where his biggest worry is going to be coming around to spacing and probably his defense, which have been two struggles at least last season for the Hawks. It was two main struggles, and partially why he got traded. He shot like a career low 29% from three, and for him to come in and reestablish himself as a 20 and 10 guy, he's gonna need to put up a lot of shots, and right now those shots aren't falling. So I think giving him that big opportunity in the starting lineup to come in and be this 20 and 10 guy, it's unrealistic when you have a guy like Markkanen and Kessler and whoever starts at guard, and then Clarkson to take up those shots, because he'll fall right back where he was in Atlanta in terms of production, because he'll be behind so many mouths to feed. Got plenty of Jazz back in here. Appreciate the support. I read weeks ago a person in the front office or staff said we want to play with three big guys. I agree. See, here's the issue here. I'll pull this back up for some context for people coming in. The three big guys rule. I think in theory, the big guys rule of playing with lots of versatile big guys is a unique idea, because we see a team like the Cavs a few years back when they had Markkanen and they had Mobley and Jared Allen come in and be the big three guys, like a 7-footer front court fully, and that. It didn't work out, immensely well, but it showed that it could be done at the NBA level. But I think you look at them this season with the type of struggle where you have those two big guys in the front court that struggle to switch, with different types of guys on the court. Like if you're putting, it's different with Hendricks, because Hendricks is like this elite defender. But let's throw Lauri Markkanen out there or John Collins. They're not going to be the most switchable on a guard like you will see in the playoffs, because a flaw you'll see with Rudy Gobert, which a few years back is why the Jazz could never really be this top-tier defensive team in the playoffs, is whenever you're putting Rudy Gobert on the perimeter and these big guys like Gobert on the perimeter, it's going to be hard to keep up with these fast and efficient guards that are playing like at the high. Like you're not keeping up with Curry and the Warriors in that lineup. Luka is going to be hard to stop. Like the big guy era and starting these big guys is a tantalizing idea, because it is hard to stop on defense. But when you're moving around with a smaller NBA, and teams are becoming more and more versatile, it's going to be hard to bring out these giant lineups, because they'll just be too tough to match up with them. It'll be too much of a disadvantage on the defensive end, and it might be offensively a nice benefit to have. I just don't. I don't know about the big guy. Like the big guy lineup will be good if you have versatile, switchable defenders like Hendricks. Hendricks is going to be a great guy to put at the 4, because you can put him on 1 to 5 hopefully, and he won't have much issues. But a guy like Olynyk to play the 4, and then Hendricks play the 3, I think they're gonna find a lot more struggle trying to match up with teams on the defensive end. That'd be my take, and why I would probably shift towards starting Hendricks and going more youth movement right off rip, rather than John Collins for the same reason. And his best, and I'll go off this too. The best season that John Collins had was when he was partially playing center on a defensive end, and you're not going to get, or just center in general. You're not going to get that type of opportunity when you're starting next to Walker Kessler. So if you truly want John Collins to come back and be his peak self, I think bringing him off the bench rather than jumping him in the starting lineup and hoping for a 20 and 10 type of production, you're not going to get that. You're simply not going to get that. And maybe I'll eat my words once season rolls around and he starts and has a career resurgence. But until he shows he can shoot the ball effectively, I would not want to take the shots away from the guys that actually need it in the starting lineup, and teams that actually and lineups that actually might win games, rather than trying to shoot on an opportunity with John Collins. I'm going to show this again because I got completely off topic. Colin Sexton is my second best point guard option for the Jazz going in next year. I went on my John Collins rant, but we're back on Colin Sexton, keeping people up to date. We'll show that graphic again. Here's what I would say about Colin Sexton. As a 6-man role, he would be great, because he is more limited as a defender. So because he is 6'1", he is a really nice scorer. But if you're shooting for that type of versatility and that type of length in the lineup, your starting lineup, which it seems like the Jazz are showing like they're going to do. I think putting Sexton in kind of defeats the purpose there. He's 6'1". He's mostly. I think he's probably more adept to the Lou Williams role, like we saw him do a few years back. He's undersized, shot creator off the bench that can create offense in a pinch. And we didn't see Sexton do that at a fully healthy level last year. He only got 23 minutes a game, played 48 games. We did not see the full capacity that Sexton was going to play. But this season, he should be coming back fully healthy after some rest at the end of the All-Star break. After that, get a full offseason ahead of him. This should be the season for Colin Sexton to come in and start producing like he did. Hopefully, at least close to what he did in Cleveland. But the one thing about Collins he will be in trade talks all year. I can guarantee you, if there's going to be a player that will be on the market, it'll be Kelly Olynyk and Colin Sexton. But both because they have the production on their side, age on their side, and they're two players that will get constant opportunity, and two guys that the Jazz might not be keeping long term. So I would say if there's any guy to keep an eye on for a midseason move, it would be Sexton. But with that, if the Jazz want to get the most value out of Sexton, playing him midway through the season or at the beginning of the midway through the season, you're going to want to play as much of him as you can to get his value up. And I think off the bench, getting him like 20, he got the 23 last year, bumped that up to maybe 30, or not 30. That might be a little high. 25, 28. Let's see the minutes get around there. And then I think you're going to be able to see Sexton come into his role as like he did in Cleveland as being that, top tier scorer. That'll be more of a volume type of guy. But I think that role is going to be coming as a six-man rather than a starter. Just because that length and versatility isn't going to be there. We got plenty of those. Bring him up real quick. Sexton has an intensity in defense and offensively. He doesn't shy to go in the picture. Yeah, he does show some intensity on the defensive side. There is I bring it back to the infamous picture of him, or the video of him slapping the floor, and he's he is that that he does bring the intensity on defense, but at the end of the day, when it comes playoff time, Sexton will be picked on for being 6'1" as a defender. That's just how it's going to be. You can be a tenacious defender as all you want, but unless you're like a lockdown, like a Marcus Smart, you're gonna be picked on for size when it comes time to win the big games. Which is why I think I don't know if his standing on this roster is going to be as long term as people think. He does have this 3-year deal. I think it's 2 or 3 year deal, which he's signed on to the Jazz officially. I'd be shocked if he extends that out long term, because he kind of was brought to Utah as like a rental or prove it and see it, even though he was signed here. It was part of the sign and trade for Donovan Mitchell. And of course he could come in and be a 25 point per game scorer, but I think his ceiling on this team is very low based on what the Jazz are trying to do. They're drafting for size, versatility, just great defensive players, and Sexton doesn't match any of that. I don't know if he ever will. Maybe he does come in to develop as like this tenacious defender. That's like 25 points per game back to where he was in Cleveland, but I don't see it. That's a bit of a tall ask for me. But that does allow us to go into our number one option for the Jazz at point guard next season, Jordan Clarkson. I would start Jordan Clarkson at point guard next season. I don't know if it's too close for me. I think the debate of him, playing the 1 or 2 guard, I mean, that could be a discussion. But I think you got to expect Clarkson to slot as a starter this next year. He's paid over $23 million to return. He will have immense play in the first year that he signed. The next 2 years of his deal after this season are only for about $14-15 million. So the Jazz aren't, quite, tied into him there. But as far as this season goes, all bets are off. I think he'll get the same type of opportunity that he did as far as last year. He had a career best last year. He started all 61 games he played, so I wouldn't see that changing whatsoever. And I think as far as the Jazz are concerned, if they're not worried about that positional need for that point guard, that ball distributing, pass first type of point guard, you start Jordan Clarkson and absolutely lean into that. He has the size and he has versatility to be the starter, like the starter as he was last season. He averaged over 20 points per game in that role. He has a good reputation as a six-man, which is why I've seen a lot of media and fans try to pin him into that role eventually. And I think that's a role he could eventually go into. But I think starting off in year one, if you're paying your guy $23 million to come back, I don't see them benching him as a six-man role at least to start. For my money, I think if you start Clarkson at the 1 and Abaji at the 2, that gives you a great blend of having scoring and still having good size and versatility on this end. And Clarkson's a great, he's an underrated passer. And then you have Abaji on this end who's going to provide the defense. He's a younger player, so you get some more upside on that end. And I think that just balances your lineup really well. And then you have Clarkson or Sexton off the bench to be your sixth man. I think Keyonte can come in as like a combo guard floater, whichever one he ends up being better in. Talen Horton-Tucker will be there as a 1-3, be that 3-and-D type of guy. I would hope he can come in and be that type of playmaker if he really starts showing it. But I think getting the ball, using him as an off-ball creator rather than an on-ball creator, probably a better decision. And then you have Chris Dunn fighting for minutes at the very end, hopefully maybe getting 10 to 12 and a pinch when you need that defensive playmaking. But Jordan Clarkson is the guy to start for the Jazz. I think that role could end up diminishing in year 2 or year 3 of his contract because he will be 33, 34 by the end of it. So you can't expect the 20 points per game to continue with the guard, especially. Guards don't really come in and sustain that type of production for late in their career like forwards or bigger guys do. So that's why I would probably pin Clarkson in. I would say the plan for the Jazz would be you start Clarkson year 1. I keep saying Sexton. You start Clarkson year 1 next to Abaji. You see what you got in the roster. If Keyonte George starts popping up, you start Keyonte going into the next year. Clarkson be the sixth man. If Clarkson comes in and being a borderline all-star like he was last year, you can start him in going into next year, and it won't really harm you if you don't want to. And then Talen Horton-Tucker and Colin Sexton, if both of those guys, one of those guys comes out starring out, they'll be the starter next year. If none of those happen, then I think you can start to look at the possibility of a big-time trade for an all-star coming in. And then I don't know past that. If Chris Dunn ends up popping up and being like, the type of guy, I would be shocked if he's coming up and putting up the points he did the last quarter of the season. So there's a lot of options on the table for the Jazz after this season. I think going into starting next season, though, I would bet on Clarkson. Planetta says, Jared, I think Clarkson would be good as a leader of the second unit and a Hardy giving him the responsibility. Jordan was incredible when he started out the bench. See, I don't hate this idea either. So here's the thing. Clarkson is going to be really good for the Jazz for the entirety of his contract for the next 3 years because he will be that veteran role. He's a fan favorite. He's been established in this locker room, and he's been a good scorer to go to and a good dependable guy to go to the entire time he's been with the Jazz. But I think this is more of an opportunity to look at as far as after the trade deadline or year 2 or year 3 of this contract, this is a role that I think he should be in. Right now, though, I don't see a reason why you should come off of a career season where you started all the games he did last year, and then end up being like, yeah, you're coming off the bench, you're getting paid $20 million. I would probably opt towards let's bring him back and see what he can do in the same type of role. But yes, I think Clarkson eventually will transition to that 6th, 7th man role when he is older. And on the same contract he will be for the Jazz, because I don't think the Jazz would have signed him to that long-term deal. They didn't intend to do it. I mean, they could trade him down the line, of course. But Clarkson will excel as a 6-man role for this team eventually, which is why I don't hate this idea at all. I think to start the season, though, you put in Clarkson as your most dependable guy to start the season with, because you know what he's going to provide as a starter. You saw it all last season, and not much has changed except for the depth on the roster. But you start him at the 1. You put in Abaji or maybe even Keyonte if you're getting real shaky there at the 2. That gives you lots of versatility and size. So for the second unit, I would probably put Sexton and see what he can do in that role. I think Sexton or Clarkson can be the one to play this role, and I think they can play it really well. But I would opt towards Sexton being the one to start this one initially because he is still coming off that injury. You want to see what he can do when giving the full control of like an offensive unit. Because if he was a 6-man, you pair him next to, probably the bench off rip. You're probably pairing him with Keyonte, probably pairing him with Bryce Sensabaugh, Taylor Hendricks, and Kelly Olynyk. So out of all that group, I think any of Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, and Keyonte George can be the number one option in that unit. So I think coming off the bench shouldn't be viewed as a negative thing or like a shot on anyone. Because I think they can actually excel in that unit. It'd actually be looking out for the long-term success. But yeah, that's my little spiel. To finalize it out, I don't have a graphic for this one. But in terms of how I would order the Jazz depth chart going into the season 2023, I would go Jordan Clarkson 1, Colin Sexton 2, Talen Horton-Tucker 3, Keyonte George 4, Chris Dunn 5. You could probably, interchange Talen Horton-Tucker and Keyonte George. I might have talked myself into putting Keyonte George 3 at this point. Because, I love the upside that you've seen during Summer League. But, again, I think it might be a bit too early to put in a guy that is known to be an inefficient and bad defender in the starting lineup as a rookie. I think that's way more better suited. That's way better suited off the bench as opposed to starting role day one. If he comes in and has a stellar training camp or a stellar preseason, if he keeps continuing that stellar production, I think by all means push him in, pushing Keyonte George to that starting lineup. But I think people have been like, oh, start Keyonte George day one. That's a bit premature from 3 games of Summer League. Especially, he didn't stay healthy during the 3 games. I think you want to treat your rookies with a lot of care, and a lot of safety, which is what the Jazz have been doing, especially with Taylor Hendricks up rookie year or in Summer League. Playing the Jazz back again in Summer League. Agbaji and Keyonte played well as both. So. And that's why I think I think as far as things go right now, this will be the future of the Jazz backcourt and Keyonte George and Ochai Agbaji, because you do have that scoring and the offensive playmaker that you would, and Keyonte playing that role, and then Agbaji can be the off-ball playmaker. Because as far as anyone concerned, Agbaji will not be like the on-ball creator. He won't be like a Bradley Beal type of scorer at the 2 guard. He'll be more of a 3-and-D type of guy, role player type of guy. Because anytime he's gotten the opportunity to command an offensive unit himself, it has not been that pretty. It's been a small sample size, and of course he's got some time to adjust that. But I think the future does hold a future of Keyonte George and Ochai Agbaji in the backcourt. But as far as this season goes, it might be a bit early for that, because you do have Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, and Talen Horton-Tucker, all 3 guys that are probably at this point better than Keyonte. As it stands right now. So I think if the Jazz are looking to win games like they have right now, I would probably put them those 3 over. But yeah, I would probably consider this the end of this episode. We were going on a whole 40-minute spiel on what the Jazz are going to do at point guard next season. But that's about all I have for this week. Next week we'll be here same exact time. Don't know the topic. If you guys have any topics you guys want to talk about, make sure to DM me on Twitter at Jared Cook NBA. It's right there, right here. I don't know if it's on the that side or not, but make sure to DM that for any ideas or any type of topics you want me to talk about. But yeah, make sure to follow Inside the Jazz on Facebook and Twitter if you don't already. If you aren't following our YouTube, make sure to do that as well. Make sure to follow me on Twitter for any type of NBA takes. And yeah, we'll keep posting on any type of Jazz news we got going on. That's about all I got. Make sure to tune in next week, same time, for another episode of Salt Lake Takes. But that is all I have. We're good. See ya.